Hey everybody, welcome to Beyond the Paranormal podcast. It's Tuesday, another Tuesday, and we're already into February of 2022. So let's keep moving right along, get into spring, get into summer. I can get in my Speedo. Maybe, I don't know. We'll talk about
Ooh,
that later.
baby.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, uh, stop it, RhiAnna. So tonight's show, we got demonologist, paranormal researcher, and preacher Mark Tabata. He's going to talk about his experiences and things like that, plus some UFO knowledge with us. And but before we get into this, I want to introduce my co-host. And up the right-hand corner, as you can see, I got Pretty Creep Show, my fifth, and then down here on the left-hand side, the sassy one, we got RhiAnna.
Hey.
She saved us tonight. I do want to talk about Johnny Zulu. He was the co-founder of Megaforce Records with his wife Marsha, who passed away a couple of years ago. They formed it in 1982. John passed away today. He's a pillar of the metal scene. The couple played a key role in launching the thrash metal genre, establishing the formed label to release Metallica's first album, Kill 'Em All, in 1983, which is AKA Metal Up Your. Sorry, I'm not gonna say it because I respect our guest here. So, while also putting out early records from Anthrax, Testament, and many more, Zulu passed away today at the age of 69 in Florida, surrounded by his family and friends. So, without Johnny Z, we would have no thrash metal. So he had a huge contribution to this. I know this is on the Paranormal podcast, but I had to get this in here. So, without further ado, Mark, welcome to the podcast, man. How you doing?
Hey, doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No
Thank
problem
you
whatsoever.
for saving us tonight.
Oh, I'm glad I can be here.
So, RhiAnna, since she saved us and reeled us in tonight, you can start this out, girly girl.
So, I know that you have so many experiences that not even paranormal would be the word to describe it. Weird. I know that you travel and you've seen a lot of occurrences that a lot of people would be shocked. And anything you can share with us, I'd really, really love to hear about. So if you've got anything on your mind or anything that you think would shock somebody that you feel like is worthy enough to be thrown out to the world on a podcast, we'd really, really love to hear it. So, um, first paranormal, first scary, first time in your life you were like, whoa, there's something here that's not describable. Can you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Um, and first of all, let me say I love your podcast.
Yeah.
Um, yes, I love that. I've only been able to listen to a couple episodes because I stay so busy, but I really enjoy your podcast.
Good,
Thank
good.
Um,
you.
well, as a Christian and a gospel preacher, I've been blessed to work with a lot of people, especially in Kentucky,
Mm-hmm.
and who've had some very frightening paranormal experiences. Probably one of my first ones involved a gentleman I baptized uh, who, after one of our follow up Bible studies, he told me, he said, Brother Mark, he said, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, what's up? And he said, well, you know how loud you are, right? and I was like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't listen to the terms, but I know I've got a pretty big mouth, got the gift of gab. And he said, well, when I was in church the other day and you were preaching, something started screaming at me, and it was louder than you are. And I said, well, that's amazing enough right there. And I didn't know what was going on, but it kept happening. So I was thinking maybe he's got some kind of, I don't know, a mental issue. I don't know. He talked to his doctors at my suggestion, and they couldn't find anything. So at this point, he started writing things down that it was telling him. And it was telling him stuff about my childhood, some
Wow.
weird things, and
Hey,
just some really weird things. And I was like, this is bizarre. And I was kind of new to the whole spiritual war type thing. And there was a lady at our church, and I talked to her, and I asked her if she would join me in a day of prayer and fasting for him. And we weren't going to tell anyone about it, and we weren't even going to tell him about it. We were just going to pray and fast. I was going to stay at my house that Saturday because Jesus had taught in, I believe it's Mark 9:49 or Mark 29, that some demons only go out by prayer and fasting. And so I stayed at my house and prayed and fasted that Saturday. She stayed at her house and prayed and fasted that Saturday. The next day, I went to church, and he come up to me, and he was just happy as a lark. And he said, "Brother Mark, it's gone." And I
Wow.
said, "What do you mean?" And and he said, "You know that thing I've been telling you about?" I said, "Yes." He said, "It told me last night it was being cast out, and it's gone." And I give all glory to God. That's
Wow.
one thing I've learned in all my experiences. There's nothing as powerful as the name, the authority of Jesus Christ. And I've had other experiences like that in this
Wow.
area. We've dealt with a lot of situations involving demons, and we've dealt with situations involving UFOs. And I
Ooh,
don't just
tell us,
mean,
tell us.
are you okay? Okay. So,
John likes the UFO stories too.
oh,
And
good, good, good,
Sasquatch.
good, good,
And
good.
Mr. Sass, as I call him.
Huh?
And Sasquatch, Mr. Sass, as I call him.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a good friend in Ohio. He's all into Bigfoot, and I've got a lot of theories about that also, tying back to the Book of Jasher and the Book of Jubilees and the Nephilim. But
Wow, we need Mark on
so
here for like a full hour on this, man. This is
I
really
told
good.
you. I was like, I love this guy.
oh well, bless your hearts. I appreciate that. I hope you have a good pillow. I have a rule. I tell people. I tell them that they can't fall asleep till I start preaching.
Tap out some popcorn.
But when I was younger, I had an experience with the UFO. I grew up in the mountains of West Virginia, and every summer I'd have a cousin who lived in the city, about 2.5, 3 hours away. His parents would come and leave him at our house for a week. And I remember one night, this is back in, goodness, the
Let's see.
1980s, probably 87, 88, 89, somewhere around then. Um, my cousin was staying the night with me the week, and I had a dog outside. He started barking. So we went outside because we thought maybe there's a deer in our backyard. And we walked over to our field, and you got to keep in mind this is before, this is a long time before the news about the Roswell Grays. You know what I'm saying? And this is before, I think the strangest thing I saw on TV on the 2 channels we had was this movie called Intruders. But this is before all that. We walked over to the field, and there were these 3 gray things standing.
Wow.
And I remember I looked over at my cousin. I said, "Josh, those are some pretty strange looking deer." And he said, "Mark, those aren't deer." And he turned around and ran inside the house. Well, I ran. We're screaming like banshees. Woke my mom up. She was, well, we got in trouble because we weren't supposed to be outside, but she went outside with the shotgun. And well, the next day she went to work, and I went out to my cousin. He didn't want to go outside. I couldn't blame him. But I went outside and walked over to our field, and the ground was black where it had
Wow.
happened. Well, that night, at the same time, I think it was 11:37 p.m. My dog, my little beagle Buffy, she started going crazy again, barking. So this time I had a camera, and I had we had beach paddles. We went outside again, and there was this big red light in our sky. And I snapped a picture, and as soon as I snapped the picture, it zoomed across the sky and stopped, and then shot straight up. And we went screaming inside, got in trouble again. And I remember I took the film and I stuck it in a my mom's china dish. She never used it, not that one. And I remember though I stuck it in there, the camera film, and the next morning it was gone. And
Wow.
I've never really understood anything about what that was. I know it freaked me out, but since moving to Kentucky, I've worked with individuals who've had some pretty frightening experiences.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of times they're afraid to talk about them because they're afraid people think they're nuts.
Yeah,
And
it's sacrilege around here because because yeah,
it's
oh yeah,
true. It's true, and it's heartbreaking. And several of the ones we've worked with, uh, there have been extremely strange coincidences. I'm not sure that's the right word. There have been parallels in almost all their stories. And have y'all ever heard of a man by the name of Philip Imbrongo?
Not me.
Philip Imbrongo, he is a prominent ufologist, and he wrote a book. Let me bring it up here. He wrote a book entitled, let me find it here.
I'll tell you something that's crazy. What Mark said earlier about his brother in his church was, remember when we had a guest, Christopher St. Booth, on here a couple weeks ago, guys, and he talked about all these possessions and stuff, and about like how
It was in his
Spain.
gut.
This,
And
yeah, well, no, I'm talking about like the interviews that he did with the people that were supposed to be in had some type of possession, that they all heard the same thing going through their minds.
that they all had written down stuff, and it was all
Exactly,
for.
and that's what I thought about your friend that was in church with you
Mhm.
when you're preaching. That clocked in my head. I'm like, oh my God, there's another
Yeah.
story about the
Yes.
same thing of
Mhm.
It's
we
there.
are legion and stuff like that. I mean, it's crazy.
Yes. There are
Mhm.
so many connections. And
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not, this is what's strange too. I've learned over the years there is a connection even to the UFO phenomenon.
Mhm.
Philip Imbrongo wrote a book entitled Interdimensional Universe: The New Science of UFOs, Paranormal Phenomena, and Other Dimensional Beings. And listen to what he said. He says, quote, in the final years of his life, he talks about Dr. Hynek. You guys ever heard of Dr. Hynek? He was
Mhm.
one of the most famous paranormal UFO researchers ever. And
Yeah.
he spent like 20 years studying UFOs. And, well, I'll just share this with you. In the final years of his life, Dr. Hynek no longer believed in the extraterrestrial theory for the origin of UFOs. We had many conversations about the subject, and he expressed his doubts that UFOs were physical craft from other star systems. To quote Dr. Hynek, I have come to suspect less and less the idea that UFOs are nuts and bolts spacecrafts from other worlds. There are just too many things that go against that theory. To me, it seems ridiculous that a technologically advanced race would travel great distances to do relatively stupid things like stop cars, collect soil samples, and frighten people. I think we must begin to re examine the evidence. We must look closer to home for the answer. I think
Mhm.
we should consider that UFOs come from other dimensions, a parallel reality, a universe that exists in the same place as ours, but a
Mm.
different frequency, so to speak. Hynek
Yeah.
also started to see the connection between UFO reports and certain types of psychic phenomena, because there are many UFO cases that have poltergeists, apparitions, strange sounds and lights, and other types of psychic manifestations attached to them. Over the many years that I have been researching the phenomenon, I have found this to be true. Quite a number of UFO case studies are like ghost stories rather than encounters with spaceships and beings from another star system, end quote. Well,
Mm.
there was another researcher, and I can say, just with the people I've worked with, there are connections like that with almost every example of the UFO phenomenon I've found.
Mm.
In fact, almost everyone I've worked with who's been involved with alien abduction, they all have some background with the occult.
Mm.
Um, a couple of them are actually involved in seeking out these things as part of their occult religion. Um, and there are several UFO abduction cases that have been stopped by
Mhm.
believers in Jesus calling on his name. There was one guy
Mhm.
I worked with, one gentleman. Um, he had multiple abduction experiences. I converted him from witchcraft several years ago, and he had been having UFO abduction experiences. And he told me about one where he was in bed at night, and him and his girlfriend were sleeping, and he woke up and he was surrounded by little gray beings. and he started to levitate off the bed. And he started getting real scared, which who wouldn't? I'd be terrified. And he cried out, "Jesus, please, please save me." He fell to the bed, woke his girlfriend up, and the little gray things disappeared. Like, take Roswell. A lot of people don't know the occult connections to Roswell, New Mexico. There were two men, L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. Hubbard became the founder of the Church of Scientology, and Parsons became one of the most well-known scientists at what would become NASA. What a lot of people don't realize is that they were both extremely devout disciples of a man named Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley from the 1920s was one of the most well-known occultists in the world. And in the 1920s, he performed a ceremony that he referred to as the Alalantra working, in which he tried to open a portal to another dimension, in which he said something came through, and he drew a picture of it. Have you heard of this one? He drew a picture of this little sucker. It's called Lamb, L-A-M. You can Google it. It's so creepy. When you look it up, guess what it is? It's a Roswell Gray. Well,
Wow.
yeah, two of his disciples were Hubbard and Parsons. In the 1940s, they went out to the Mojave Desert outside of Roswell and performed a ceremony that was very much like the Alalantra working. Within a week or two, that's when the UFO sightings in America went off the charts. That's when the Roswell crash happened. That's when, what's his name? I can't remember his name right now. He was in the plane and he saw the whole fleet of the UFOs. You know what I'm talking about? Well, then the government, this is all documented in the book by, trying to remember the guy's name. Can't remember the guy's name. He's an investigative journalist. The book is called Final Events. He was shocked to find this out. The government created a group to investigate these things. It was known as the Collins Elite. And they ended up briefing President Ronald Reagan back in the 1980s. And they told him, after decades of research into the UFO phenomenon, these beings are claiming that they are from another planet, but they are lying to us.
Yeah.
They are actually from another dimension.
Right.
And they show vulnerability to a religion. And guess which religion it is? Christianity.
Yeah.
And so some of the most shocking things involving UFOs, and going back, even there's a person I worked with. I'm trying to be careful. I don't want to say anything.
That's fine. Yeah, no problem.
There's a person I worked with. Their family contacted me. This has been a few years ago. And they said, "Brother Mark, this person in our family she's exhibiting multiple personalities. And we need help." And my first response was, well, let's call a doctor. Want to make sure, because a lot of times, even the Bible makes a difference between demonic possession and subjection and medical things. You can see that when you read the Gospels. So I said, let's talk to the doctors. They said, we've already talked to a doctor. They can't find anything. So I went and met with the whole family at a local lake. And sometimes when I'm working with someone who I believe there might be something supernatural or demonic, I have unscented holy oil, and I will take it and draw the sign of the cross on my hand just to see if there's any kind of a reaction. Well, I got a reaction that day. I walked up to her, the whole family's there, and I held up my hand and I said, "I'm Mark Tabata, minister with the Couchtown Church of Christ. It's nice to meet you." She took my hand and she said, why are you wearing anointing oil? And I was just like,
wow. Yeah.
Trying something new here. It's strange, pretty bizarre. I've worked with people who've had haunted houses. And I was talking about the UFOs with this. I'm sorry. There's something
it's
really
okay.
strange.
I love it. All of it.
Okay. See, I'm kind of scatterbrained. I didn't really prepare.
We are too. Okay.
Okay, that's awesome. So there is
we're
a
all over the
connection,
place.
a very strange connection to the UFOs and the aliens, and to some things relating to the Bible. Back in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, we're told about a time in the history of the world where some of the sons of God came down to earth and had relations with human women and had children with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were called the
heard about
giants, or the Hebrew word, the Nephilim, or the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the phrase sons of God used there is B'nai Elohim. And it was used in that day and age to have reference to angels. You can see that in
Angel.
Job 1:6, Job 2:1-2, Job 38:4-7. Well, what's interesting is, I mean, there are accounts outside the Bible that confirm the same thing. You can go back and read the writings of the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, the Egyptians. They all talk about the giants. But one of the things that's interesting is, and this is documented by Gary Wayne in his book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, among other resources. According to not only the Bible, but sources outside the Bible, those beings reproduced before the flood of Noah, before the flood destroyed them 120 years later or so. Well, guess how they are described? Their descendants. They are described in some of these ancient texts from the land of Canaan as being gray skinned, large black eyes.
So there's the
And
connection.
again, yeah, another connection to that. And
Yeah.
it's amazing too, because the Bible says in Isaiah 13 and verse 3 that sometime during the end of the Christian age, I don't know when, I'm not a prophet, not the son of a prophet, I'm just a gospel preacher, but sometime before the end of the age, the Bible talks about the fact that the giants will return and their descendants. And it makes you wonder now, with all the UFO sightings
All
that
the
have shot
sightings
up in the world.
back, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You got me.
Well, no, they weren't average. I have a friend. He's Amish. He's about, like, I'd say 5'4", 5'3". They look to be about that size.
Wow.
And even when I was that young, I was still pretty tall when I was young. But, like, what I remember especially is they were gray, and I remember they had black eyes, and that freaked me out because, and I couldn't figure out, like, even when I was, huh? What's that, RhiAnna? Sorry. RhiAnna,
It's
sorry.
understandable to be freaked out by that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
I was totally freaked out. I was like, what's going on? But I was like, even when I told my cousin, I was like, what kind of deer are these? I knew they weren't deer, but I was trying to figure out what it was. I mean, there was some really weird. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Bubby,
very true. And
Bubby,
there's
get me
even
the
another
shotgun.
connection here with this. What's that, John? Sorry.
I said, Bubby, get me the shotgun. The deer going on the water.
Yeah, really. Boy,
Oh.
all we had to do was go get my mom. My
Pappy
mom
gonna be
Mama
proud
come
of
out
me.
with a
take care of
shotgun,
business.
honey.
This
You
one,
I
mess with
remember.
these West Virginian mamas, they gonna pull a big 22 on you.
oh
Boy,
God.
ain't that the truth. I remember one time when I was a kid, where I grew up. I grew up in a town that's not far from where I went to preaching school, in a town called Moundsville. Moundsville is well known for another. You know what I'm talking about? The Moundsville Pen?
Yes.
Yes. I need to show you my pictures from there.
Oh
They
my
will
God.
freak you out if anything will. One of the deputies, she told me that I have a picture that is one of the most terrifying she's ever seen. And there's a story to it, of course. But, like, I remember one time when I was a kid, I was growing up in the mountains up near there, and there was a prison break. It was the famous one, the real famous one. And 2 or 3 convicts got away from the prison, and my mom flipped out. And my dad's a truck driver, and he came home that night, and it was like 3, 4 in the morning, and he said he opened the door. He went inside, and he said he stopped, and he looked. My mom was sitting on the recliner. She had the shotgun, the ball bat, and a flashlight.
Oh
And he
God.
said, "What's going on?" Freaked him out.
And you know what? Here's the thing. If I was there, I go, "Psh, hey, you're from Eastern Kentucky. Act like you're from Eastern from the hills, buddy. Get your guns. Let's go. I thought we raised you right. Let's go."
See, I'm in good shape because my wife. That's
Mhm.
right. That's right. But I'm fortunate. My wife, when we took our carry and conceal test, the officer who gave us the test, he leaned over to me. He whispered. He said, "Your wife shoots better than half the Hazard Police Department."
So let
Perks,
me ask you.
benefits,
So you're
withdrawal.
good to go. You're
That's
safe.
right.
You're
That's
rolling
right.
tight.
We're
Let
in
me
good shape. But
let
I'll
me
tell
throw
you something
this in
interesting
here.
with this.
Go ahead.
It goes back to the demons. When you go back and look at the way the word demon was used in the first century, you find something really interesting. There is a man named Alexander. There's two things here with this. There's a man named Alexander Campbell. He wrote a study called Lecture on Demonology. You can get it on Kindle for 99 cents or free on the internet. And he went back and found out that when you go back and look at the way the word demon is used among the early Christians, Jews, Romans, Greeks, and the Persians, they all use the word demon to have reference to the spirits of the wicked dead. But there's something else that's interesting. When the flood happened, there's a book that's not in the Bible, and I think they had good reasons for not putting it in the Bible. I don't believe it's inspired, but the Bible refers to it over 100 times. It's the book of First Enoch. And when you go back and look at First Enoch chapter 15, you find out that when the flood came, the flood of Noah, and wiped out everyone on the earth except for Noah and his family, and destroyed the giants, the Nephilim, guess what? They are referred to there as demons.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also commonplace in the first century when Jesus lived and when the gospel first came into the world and the church fought against demons, it was commonplace to understand the demons to be the spirits of the Nephilim. So you know how a lot of times paranormal researchers will say, and a lot of times they just go, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movies like Paranormal Activity or let's see, what was that? Oh yeah, the first one. They should never show it. That guy was so funny. They shouldn't have killed him off. But in the first one, they talk about the demons, and they talk about. Remember when he said, "You don't want any negative influences," and he's like, "Don't invite your mother for dinner." But like when they're talking about demons, they always say they're beings that never had flesh. I'm like, no, 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 no. They did have flesh. They want it back. But like, that's kind of the thing. Did you know that demons are referenced over 111 times in the four Gospels? That tells me that spiritual warfare was a huge part of the ministry of Christ, and it's supposed to be a big part of the ministry of the church. And I see all these things tie together, and I've seen it more and more in my ministry. And I don't know if it's just, I can honestly say I've never dealt with more demonic stuff than I have here in Hazard, Kentucky. And there's something else too. I'll share this with you. There is a definite connection to drug abuse with this. I remember years ago, I was reading in Revelation 9 and verse 21. John talks about how during the Christian age there will be some who would not repent of, and he gives these sins, and one of the things he lists is sorceries. Well, the New King James has a footnote with that says drugs. And I was like, why would that say drugs? What the heck? And I went back and started looking. The Greek word used there is the Greek word pharmakia. What does that sound like, of course?
Pharmaceutical.
Exactly, dog. Exactly.
I get
Well,
the
when you go
cookie
back,
cat.
when you go back and look at the way that word was used, it was used originally to have reference to the good use of drugs, then later to the abuse of drugs, and then finally to the way that drugs would be used by witches in making potions. And so when you go back and look at the way the word was used in the first century, it actually had reference, the Jews believed, to when a person abused drugs, they opened themselves up to the spirit world. It's my bad. It's a weird text. I have a weird text alert. But like so many of the people I work with, they have had extremely bizarre supernatural and UFO encounters. And I don't mean hallucinations, because some of these things have been documented by people who aren't doing the drugs. It opens doors.
So
And
I don't mean to interrupt you, but did anybody just hear
no,
the car
go
start
ahead, go
just a minute
ahead.
ago? Was that just
Hear what?
me? Did anybody hear the noise a while ago, like a car starting up or a growl on here? Was that just me?
That was my phone.
Oh,
That was
I
David's
have a
Mustang
weird text message.
500,
It goes
and I
boing,
tried to
boing,
mute it.
boing. Huh?
I
Oh, it
keep
went, I
going.
didn't hear that. That's awesome.
I keep going back and thinking about, and we got to end this here just a little bit because Crit's got to go. And we're gonna get Mark back on here because this has been pretty actually cool actually. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you, friends.
So informative. We love having you so much. I really appreciate you last minute jumping in. You saved us. I
I
really
wanna
Thank
didn't want
you.
to
I
I
look
wanna
horrible. I'm dealing with COVID. I'm back here in
Yeah.
this room right now, huh?
You're so gifted.
Oh, thank you.
I
I
want to say
appreciate
this.
that.
I want to say this too before we go. I know you mentioned about your personal experience in the '80s with your UFO experience, but I keep going back and thinking about in the '70s when the UFO incident in Central Kentucky. Where there was a big gunfight with these little aliens. Little green. They said little green men.
Yes.
Yeah, Hopkinsville. Yeah,
Hopkinsville.
yeah,
Yes.
and
And it's just like the Battle of Los Angeles.
yeah.
Hmm.
There you go.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine. Uh, Folks, we hate to cut it short. We want to thank Mark for being on here this evening. And again,
Absolutely.
we apologize. We thank Mark tremendously for coming in here in a short time. But
Hmm.
we're going to get him on here. And we're going to have a big special event with this. We're going to do about a 2-hour show next time with Mark because I think that'll give us a full enough time to get things across and things like that. So this is just a little sneak peek, little piece of that cake to get you come back.
Hmm.
So please,
Thank you.
little
God bless you
taste,
all.
20, But please get subscribe to the Beyond Paranormal Podcast YouTube page and our Facebook page. We got stuff going on all the time. Keep in touch with us. Send us emails, messages if you want certain people on the show. That's totally fine. We'll reach out to them and get them. We'll cover anything that you want. Just about. So for my co-host and for Mark, we thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next